Welcome to Conversations with Cox and Kielseth, and to be more specific, that is filmmaker Alex Cox and myself, film curator Pablo Kielseth. Alex will join us by phone from his home in Oregon, while I sneak away from my office to call him from one of the projection booths used by the International Film Series, which has been screening foreign and independent movies at CU Boulder since 1941. We will keep our chats to about 20 minutes as we discuss whatever movie-related topics grab our fancy. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, action.
Alex, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you today?
I'm good. A little bit better. I just popped open a Deschutes Obsidian Stout, one of our standard favorites.
Very nice. Very nice. Yes, I have a glass of Pearl IPA in my hand, even as we speak.
And I'm looking out. The clouds look pretty spectacular, but in that weird mixing with forest fire smokish kind of way. So
yeah, we're very lucky in Oregon at the moment. Everything's calmed down in Oregon, but still in California, they've still got a bunch of fires burning.
So, but I will say, at least today, the air was where I live. At least I was not in the in the current of where the smoke was blowing, so the air was better. And they're getting the two more closest fires under some relative containment, which so that's good news. But yeah, let's so I do have to apologize, because I know I sort of sent you a very hasty email 2 days ago saying, let's talk about pirates, and I want to explain that a little bit. Next week, I've been tapped on the shoulder to be part of this conversation with two other people from CU Boulder who are faculty who specialize actually in various different things, but they also some of their specialties take them into pirate related things. And because I'd been wanting to see Scalawag, I decided, sure, I'll join the conversation. I'll watch Scalawag. And I just said in my email to you, let's talk about pirates. But I know that doesn't give us a lot of time, and I found out from your reply that you have not seen very many pirate movies, apparently.
I have not. I mean, the only one I can remember seeing was Treasure Island, and I must have been like 3 or 5 or something when I saw it. I remember an actor called Robert Newton, who, as I recall, had a wooden leg, one eye, a parrot on his shoulder, and he went, "Arr, Jim lad," like that. But what else went on? I know there was some money in it because it was called Treasure Island, but I can't remember.
Yeah. Scalawag is based on Treasure Island, but it's a Western. But it does have director and protagonist Kirk Douglas, and they make he is basically the stand-in for the pirate, and they make a big deal about his peg leg, which he goes through 3 different peg legs, and spoiler here, but he does ride off into the sunset at the end of it. And they take this moment in the magic light of the dusk to make sure that they even get the peg reflecting the sunlight. So the peg leg gets a lot of attention.
Does he have a parrot?
And there is a parrot. Yes, there is a parrot. So
Great.
that also comes in there. There's no eye patch, but those 2 out of 3, and there's also gold coins, and so there's some treasure involved. It's a movie that I've always wondered about, because I actually had the poster for a random reason, even though I hadn't seen the film, in college. It was in the house that I lived in. I've always been curious about it. I've also been curious about it because it's one of 2 movies that Kirk Douglas has directed, and
yes.
And it's very and it had Danny DeVito in it, which was a surprise. It's a family movie, and it's the kind of movie that if I had seen the movie when I was 6 or 7 years old, I think that would have been the perfect age to watch it. Right now, I guess during a pandemic, through slightly more jaded, jaundiced eyes, the musical score, I found it a little too, children movie oriented.
Pirate movies are for that age group. Pirate movies are for I think for like the 3 to 8 age range. which is why Johnny Depp is such a great actor, because he was the first actor ever able to play a Disney animatronic character in a pirate movie, and he did, and he finally made a movie that made money, and so there's definitely, pirates have legs, but only for like little children, I think.
Well, they're one-legged beasts with the other being a peg leg, oftentimes.
That's right. Yeah, the pirates hop. Pirates hop. But I was thinking, because what came into my mind when I was thinking about that stuff was Mutiny on the Bounty, which obviously isn't about pirates. It's about a mutiny. But that made me think. Then I had a version of that film in my head, which doesn't exist, which was Charles Lawton playing Captain Bligh and Marlon Brando playing Fletcher Christian.
Huh.
But that's two different versions of the same movie, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm also not up to speed on all my pirate movies. I know about like some of the classics, like the Seahawk. Then there's some that I didn't care for, like Hook. But there's a lot out there, including
even though those are really mutiny. Those are mutiny movies rather than pirate movies. But I do like very much Charles Lawton and Marlon Brando, and would love to see them, face off in a mashup.
The thing is, I'm going to be the lamest person talking at this conference because I'm more interested in what they have to say, because I'm actually more interested in real pirates than I am in cinematic pirates. I mean, even a cursory look online, I'm finding out things like supposedly, they were the pirates were the first to come up with a recipe for a guacamole, which that's great,
Wow.
And I vaguely seem to recall that there's also that pirates were also, that they actually had like a sort of socialist structures, at least, old traditional pirates. I mean, you have to differentiate.
No, I've read that they were kind of anarchist groups, that they just, everybody was equal and everybody had the same power to decide what was going to happen next.
And we have to differentiate
between certain pirate
modern
ships,
pirates.
It's true of them all.
Yeah, and it's a different thing with modern pirates, obviously. So, but the real thing I wanted to talk with you, because what I was hoping to do is that before we talk today, I would have actually been able to have seen Posse as well, which I did add to my queue, because then I could say that I've seen the two movies that were directed, by Kirk Douglas. But I have not yet been able to see it. I will get to it. But I'm going to have to save that one for another time. Instead, I got caught up just trying to catch up on some of the news. And there was an article that kind of caught my eye about how in Japan, they just actually had a successful theatrical blowout for animated movie that grossed over the equivalent of $44 million in ticket sales, based on a what was it, like a 22 volume series, a manga comic, which the comic itself has sold over 100 million copies. So there again, you get into this, the franchise thing where you've got a built-in audience. So they were ready.
Yeah, an entirely different world, an entirely different culture, because there are films made in foreign cultures which are sensations which we never know about, and
right,
and because their sensations don't jibe with ours.
But the other thing is that because they are a different culture, they actually are dealing with this pandemic with much more success, because they actually are more socially minded. In a way, they are kind of like pirates in terms of actually, giving each other, caring more about, doing stuff that keeps each other safer. And but the thing that was surprising to me, the thing that caught my eye was that, in Japan, they also, the authorities also restricted theaters to operating at 50% capacity. But now they're allowed to fill the house as long as they don't serve food. That's it. So they can fill a theater as long as they don't serve food. Does that remind you of any venue that you've ever been to?
Oh, that sounds like the IFS in Boulder, Colorado.
It's so ironic that, we had an environment with 400 seats that was always easy to socially distance in and never served food. We're the most primed for this pandemic, and yet I do not have access to the venue. It's just, but anyway, we're waiting to see how horrifically this unfolds here in the United States. The death toll is still daily, just not where anyone wants it.
But the death toll now is nowhere near the percentage that it was of cases earlier. Although, I mean, the figures seem so unbalanced and uncertain that one doesn't really know. But it does seem like there was a very high death toll comparatively in the first wave, and the second wave that we're into, a lot of people are getting infected, but the death toll is much less. So, but the chaos and and also the long-term effects of the disease. But because I mean, what if you survive and you survive with like really chronic, disastrous consequences? It's wow. It's a big mystery experiment that we find ourselves in.
And I read that somewhere that there is some speculation that almost up to 70% of people that have had it may have some form of heart damage that ranges from very mild to more extreme, that might not even make itself apparent until, in your later years. Somewhere else I was reading how during the 1918, the so-called Spanish flu, it should have been called the Kansas flu, but children who were born during that time were more prone to some crazy, diseases that such as were chronicled in Awakenings, that movie with Robin Williams. So yeah, who knows what?
I don't know what movie's that. I don't know what the movie with.
It was a movie that came out back a few decades ago, and it had Robin Williams in the title role. Actually, it was based on a book by Oliver Sacks, and we actually have a documentary about Oliver Sacks. It's called Oliver Sacks: His Own Life, which you can watch through the internationalfilmseries.com website.
Excellent.
And it was one that we had programmed originally on the previous spring calendar, but we had to cancel it. But now it's available for people to watch, and it's actually very good. And it's
good.
I do want to ask one last just random thing, because I was reading an obituary for Spencer Davis, right? Or is it Davies? No, it's Davis. Spencer Davis, whose band he was a big
Spencer Davis group. Yes, but what were their hits? I remember their name, but I don't remember their.
They did
sound.
In the 1960s. Their hits included "Gimme Some Lovin'," "I'm a Man," and "Keep on Running," and these were not sung by him, but rather by a teenager by the name of Steve Winwood, who would go on to, of course, go into Traffic and a solo career. But I guess originally the group was known as the Rhythm and Blues Quartet, and they performed R&B covers in Birmingham clubs. But then, and this was the part that caught my eye, and I just thought it was entertaining, but the band's name was changed to the Spencer Davis Group in 1964. As the story goes, the other members agreed to the new name because Mr. Davis was willing to do interviews, allowing them to sleep longer. And I just thought, you know what? I would be in the camp of the people who would want to sleep longer. I would totally give up. I wouldn't want my name in the, in the limelight anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's just there's no accounting for taste, and those must have been some pretty humble rock and rollers. But they weren't, were they? They weren't rock and rollers. It was different. It was a different form, a different genre of music.
I mean, I was just wondering if that was like what were you listening to when it comes to music back when you were a teenager?
Well, 1964. What was I listening to in 1964 when I was like 9 or 10? I mean, what was on the radio really? Because we only had the BBC in those days on the radio, and they didn't play. I mean, their idea of popular music was like dance band music from the 1920s. and vaudeville songs. There was a popular entertainer called George Formby, and he had a song called When I'm Cleaning Windows. And another song, I'm leaning on a lamppost at the corner of the street in case a certain little lady comes by. And so we heard this kind of stuff, vaudeville music, dance band music, right through until the middle of the 60s. And then, the Beatles had become so big that they had to allow a certain amount of quote-unquote pop music on the radio. And the other thing that came in around about the same time was what we called, in England, we called country and western music. And there was a show on the BBC every Thursday night, I think it was after The Prisoner. The Prisoner ended, and then, on television, on ITV, and then there was like an hour's break, and then at like 9:30 in the evening, the BBC had a half-hour show called Country Style, where they would play country and western music. So it was pretty limited, but it was massive too, because anything that played on the BBC, whether it was Gene Pitney's 24 Hours to Tulsa, or whether it was the Beatles' I Want to Hold Your Hand, got massive nationwide coverage. And so those big coverage radio stations really created the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Who and all the bands of that time, I think.
When do you feel you started to really connect with music in terms of just actively seeking it out?
Later, like in my mid-teens, because I never really paid a lot of attention to music, because we weren't like an audiophile family, so we didn't have like a stereo or anything like that. We had like a mono gramophone somewhere in the corner, but that was limited to my Morricone. My Morricone taste was the main thing. I was totally into Morricone, but then later, when I was a teenager, I got a kind of work-study job, a part-time job at the local radio station, Radio Merseyside, and they had a big record library, and so then I could like bring home like Alice Cooper and Beatles and all this stuff, and so that was my awakening. Really, was getting my hands on the record collection of the local radio station.
Now, how old were you when you worked at the radio station?
15, something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
15, 16. Somewhere that I have interviews that I did for the radio station. I did an interview with Frank Zappa.
Oh, really? We're doing a documentary on Frank Zappa.
I know you are, and I've been trying to figure out where's that interview. I was looking through a box the other day trying to find cassettes, because I've got a cassette tape somewhere of my
that would be
Frank
amazing.
Zappa interview, which was obviously done originally on reel-to-reel, because there were no cassettes in those days. But anyway, our friend Dan Wool, I'm wondering if I sent it to our friend Dan Wool for safekeeping.
That would be, I would love, if you find it, I will do everything in my power to share it with our listening audience, because, I've got some interviews too that I did, and they're also on these but they're like on mini cassettes, which I don't have a player for anymore, but like like Ozzy Osbourne and.
Whoa, you interviewed Ozzy Osbourne?
Yeah, that was in 2001, but it was on a mini cassette, and I don't have a player for the mini cassettes. Although I think we might have put that up somewhere. Anyway, I can find that for sure. But even more, I mean, your Zappa interview is going deeper and deep, in the past. And I know that might be a little harder, but it would be fantastic if you found it. That'd be great.
If I can find it, I'll definitely send it your way. I interviewed other rock and rollers too. I interviewed Brian Ferry of Roxy Music when they were playing in Southport.
Brian, Roxy Music strikes me as something that might be a little too soft and poppy for your taste, but do you fancy them, or what's
I dug them in those days, because in those days there was no punk rock, was there? We were in a kind of a hiatus, and so we listened to what was available. We listened to Roxy Music, and we listened to the Strawbs, who I don't think ever made it to the States.
I've got a couple I've got a couple Strawbs albums. Yeah.
Oh, really? How funny! I interviewed Dave Cousins of the Strawbs for Radio Merseyside.
There you go.
It was all happening. I tried to interview Lou Reed, but he wouldn't let me. He wouldn't accede to an interview for the local radio station.
Wow. Well, geez, don't ever throw any of that away. And,
It's somewhere, or it's not, or it's in the bin. I don't know. But I'm going to look and try and find, especially the Frank Zappa, because it would be a nice tie-in for.
The interesting, to me, this is just, my old sawhorse, but it's interesting to me that stuff that is very old actually sometimes is easier to get, whereas stuff like for instance, I've just been trying to translate some old hard drives that were in my office to a new hard drive, and one of the hard drives just crapped out entirely. There's no way to get the information that was on it. So that digital information is just so ephemeral, and people are always thinking, oh, it's always going to be there. Well,
no,
it might always be there if it's on a hard tape. If you can see the matter on which it was taped, then maybe 30, 40 years later, you'll still be able to, or in the case of cinema, of course, with celluloid, 100 years later, you might still be able
for celluloid,
to.
and for tapes, you're right. I mean, we don't know the longevity of tapes, and we're talking about tapes.
Well, I still have my cassette tapes from when I was a teenager, and they all play just fine and sound better than even some of the.
So that's like 70 years ago. So that's pretty good.
And then here's these hard drives from 12 years ago, and all the information, like years, maybe even a decade of information, just vanishes because it's no longer, the hard drive craps out. It just won't, compute. So, so hopefully Zappa is alive and well in the analog realm of an attic space.
In the attic in the Colstein Valley in Oregon, but I'll try and find it. One day I'll find it, and we'll do something with it.
Well, I'm glad we were able to jaw a little bit today. Sorry, I was so unprepared. I'll try to catch up to Posse for next week.
Oh, definitely do, because Posse's you'll enjoy Posse, I think. It's quite a striking film.
Good. Excellent. Always nice to have something to look forward to, which is how I consider these conversations. So we will.
Oh, me too. It was very nice chatting. Give my love to everybody there. Say thanks to Jason for his extraordinary work, and we'll speak again.
All right. Sounds good, Alex. Take care.
Okay, you too. Cheers.
And cut. Okay, that's a wrap.
Thanks again for joining Alex Cox and myself today. I'd like to thank Jason Phelps for handling the audio and Ted Thacker for letting us use the intro to his song, The Ballad of Slim Cessna, for the musical cues that bookend these conversations.